And it was important that the process be given some momentum out of that. As you know, we don't have any strict timelines for this process. The leaders did say, I think it might have been as long ago as the end of last year, that they hoped that they would be able to conclude an agreement by the end of this year. Well, that is going to be kind of difficult between now and the 31st of December, it has to be admitted. The Secretary-General is meeting them again at the end of January, presumably, to congratulate them on their agreement, although it would be wonderful if that happens, but I don't think that's very likely. But nevertheless, they need to maintain the momentum and the optimism of the public that an agreement can be reached. And that's the important thing, not that they finish the negotiations by any particular date, but that there is... I mean, he does express what is a natural and understandable concern, that you do need to keep the momentum of this process going. And I think the Security Council, generally speaking, understands the importance of maintaining this momentum. Both sides do want to see a solution. You can't go into any coffee shop in Cyprus and find people saying to you, we don't want a solution to the Cyprus problem, whether they're on one side of the buffer zone or the other side of the buffer zone in Cyprus. I think Cypriots generally do want to see this problem solved. And I think it's a bit of a myth that one side or the other doesn't have an incentive to solve the problem. I think they all regard most Cypriots, not all I suppose, but most, can't speak for every single one of them, but most Cypriots regard the status quo as unsatisfactory and want to see it changed and these issues resolved. And I think that's as true for the Greek Cypriots as it is for the Turkish Cypriots. And yes, I mean, the United Nations wouldn't be investing all the energy we are in this issue if we didn't feel in the end that it was a problem that couldn't be solved. But it requires enormous political will and political courage to do it. If it was easy to solve, it would have been solved long ago.
But don't you believe that lifting the isolations would actually make your job easier?
Well, what I believe is that the way the current process is working is probably the best modus operandi, and I don't think making any fundamental changes at this stage to the way these negotiations are taking place is likely to work. I think we'll call them the WikiLeaks documents, and I'm not even sure of the date of that particular document, and it's what somebody in Turkey, I think, has said to presumably an American diplomat about what he'd heard was likely to be my position or something. I mean, that's a very that's what in Australia we would call Chinese whispers. You know, one person tells another, tells another, tells another, and who knows how the story translates from the original comments. I think what I'd say is that the process is difficult. That is the word that I would use. I mean, there's no point in being frustrated. The process is difficult. And you know, both sides, I mean, obviously, as you would expect in a situation like this, blame each other and say, well, if that other side did a bit more, then it would all work a bit better, and if only they would make more concessions and so on. That's, I don't say that critically, that's understood. That is always the case in these sorts of negotiations. The important thing isn't to worry about whether people are frustrated or exasperated or pessimistic. The important thing is to get an outcome. And this is taking a long time, but on the other hand, Cypriots would point out to you, it's 36 years since the events of 1974, and no agreement has been reached in that time. And the reason for that is it's a very difficult issue to negotiate. So, yeah, you do need to have a steady patience in dealing with the issue. He's been very helpful in the process. I speak from time to time with President Barroso, the President of the Commission, Commissioner Foulet. The Commissioner for Enlargement is very focused on this issue. The Belgian presidency at the moment has been engaged on the issue. I've had conversations with the Belgian Foreign Minister. Previous presidencies, the Spanish presidency and so on, you can go back, Czech Republic and the like, they've been pretty focused as well, and I know the Hungarians who take over the presidency next are interested too. So within the EU, there is a lot of focus on this issue, because remember, this is not an issue which which is just about the minutiae of the negotiations in Cyprus. And I'm sure the details of that may be of interest to me and my team and the Cypriots, but are not likely to be of great interest to the broader world, understandably. I don't say that critically, it's understandable. But this is a major issue in terms of the Eastern Mediterranean and the future of the Eastern Mediterranean. It's a major issue, and it's very important that that broad perspective in terms of the Cyprus question is remembered and it's understood. And I think in my discussions with people like President Barroso, that is their interest in the Cyprus issue.